Engagers, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of using games and gamification in our daily lives, for example, to learn what we are teaching. And I am Rob Alvarez. I work at IronHack, teach at IE Business School University, and so much more, and host this podcast. If you have an extra second, please go ahead and subscribe for free to our email list at professorgame.com/subscribe. Hey, Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have Noa with us today. But Noa, before we take off, are you prepared to engage?
Yeah, totally.
Let's do this because Noa Lahav, how do I pronounce
Lahav.
Lahav is a community manager at the Tech Innovation Unit in the Israeli Ministry of Education and head of Start GameDev, which is a unique program where teachers become game developers using a no-code game engine. And they learn from top game designers and have weekly meetings with a personal mentor. The Ministry of Education will share the games with all teachers and students for free. And she is a former middle school science teacher and district coordinator, a master in education and science teaching, research scientific creativity using digital collaboration tools, and passionate about games-based learning, has taught science using Minecraft in a flipped classroom model, and guide teachers who incorporate RPGs in their lessons. So lots of exciting things going on with Noa in the past, in the present, and hopefully as well in the future. Is there anything you'd like to mention before we take off?
Oh, no. Oh my God. That's like, I didn't hear, I never heard someone describe me like recently. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And I know you're doing plenty of exciting things. And in that same sort of arena, we would like to know, Noa, what is a typical day, a typical week? Like, what does being Noa recently look like? What are you occupying your time with?
Okay. So my role in the ministry, in the Tech Innovation Unit, is divided into basically two parts. One is leading the community. We're on Facebook. The digital part is on Facebook. So a lot of engagement there and posting and answering and interviewing really, really interesting people and like making connections and trying to connect other people. So that's like some part of my job. And then the other one is the program that I lead, Start GameDev, where, as you said, teachers, we teach them game design. So it's a lot of some tech support because we have two tech people on our team. So they help with the development. And then, it's a lot of coordination with the lecturers and just seeing how the teachers go and how they progress and if they need any help, are they okay with their mentor, and, keeping track with that. So I think...
Sounds like plenty of exciting work, Noa.
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
sure plenty of the engagers are listening to that and saying, oh my goodness, that's something I would definitely like to do as well, or to be supported by somebody like Noa and all of these things that you're doing there at the ministry. And I'm really glad that you guys are doing something like that because it's hopefully very helpful for many teachers and especially their students, which is the main focus, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally.
So Noa, can you tell us a story of a time where, again, using games-based learning or this game engine that you're using, whatever you want to go for, but of a time of when, actually things didn't go well, like you were expecting or the direction was supposed to be A and you eventually led up in B. We want to take the opportunity to look into one of those fail moments or one of those first attempts in learning and see, sort of what happened, take any lessons that we can from that experience and take it away, basically. The time is yours. Yeah.
So I want to talk about when I tried to make game-based learning, things that I saw on Twitter and amazing things that people have shared that they're doing with their students, designing the whole classroom as a game with role play and the lessons were incorporated in a really cool narrative and the whole class is like set up with that. And I see an amazing like amazing work they do. And then I decided, okay, if 10 teachers do it like that I see, or 15 or 7, or I don't know, like more than one. So there must be a way to scale this up and teach like a lot of teachers how to design stuff like that and make really, really, really engaging game-based learning lessons. And I studied it a lot, and I've got a lot of support from people that I met basically on Twitter and off Twitter, because like I didn't know, and I still don't, anybody in Israel that does these kinds of things. So I tried to develop sort of a system to teach teachers how to do it. And even those 5% or I don't know, 1% of teachers that were really engaged and they wanted to do it and they had the time and they wanted to make the effort, I couldn't figure this out, just helping them with the method rather than getting something that is really templatey, if you know what I mean. Like there's a story, the narrative, and then if there's a task to be done or something to move forward in the lesson, it doesn't have any connection to the narrative at all because it's some kind of template that you put your exercises in and your tasks from your lessons inside the story. So you just, all this immersive experience is stopped. So when I figured out it can't be done, or I couldn't do it, that was like a real eye-opener for me, at least.
And what did you do about it? Like you realize, I can't do this myself. What was the next step for you? Like what did you do with that new information that you got?
I decided to like drop the whole like venture that I set on. I really tried to make it like a working, I don't know, like a true venture. I got into 2 accelerators with the Ministry of Education to make this like a whole product or a whole, I don't know, course or something like that teachers could take. And when I realized it can't be done, I just, left this whole initiative, and I support teachers who still want to do it if they find the material online, like my stuff that I published before. So I help the teachers individually if they reach out. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. Like you were trying to do something that was, as you were saying, like I think the best word to describe it was where you were trying to say like templatey, that you were trying to give something that could be sort of replicable. I'm guessing that like everybody could just grab and use. And that's really difficult, especially given that, as you probably noticed during that time, gamification, as most design disciplines, requires, designing, and designing implies, understanding the individual users and all their, potential cases and what's their particular situation and all these things, right? So I think there's a lot to sort of take away from that. There's, of course, very successful platforms in gamification doing great things, but as well, you have to think that in the end, you have to think about the specific use case, the specific things your users, your players, your people are going to be interested in, and go for that. And now look at where Noa is when she realized this, and she's giving that personalized support to professors, to teachers, to all those people doing now great things with this engine that they are creating. And Noa, thanks for all those lessons, for all that experience that you shared with us. Is there actually taking sort of a spin on this? Of course, there's times where, you realize things didn't work. Now we kind of know where you went to. Is there a time where you actually said, well, this is something, again, with games-based learning, all these things, of a time that you said, well, I'm going to go and do this thing, and it actually, the first or the nth try, whatever that looks like, it actually worked. We want to be there with you in that story as well, and maybe learn your lessons or see what, some of that success can be attributed to.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the program that I lead, because then I have an experience with a lot of teachers. Like they show me and they tell me, so it's a collection of their experience. And the best thing they say, like their testimonials, that if they work, like in the program, they work closely, very, very closely with game designers. Like, as you said, you have to be a designer, and specifically a game designer, to, like you said, know your students, see what works for them, know your topic that you're teaching. And still, if you want to do true game-based learning and not like the wrapping, the gamification template thing where you get rewards on your work regardless of a game that you're going through, just, the wrapping, as I said. So to do that, you have to work closely with game designers because great teachers, they know how to teach and they know how kids learn, but they don't know game design. So this support they have in the program, it's a really good match, and we see their games that they're planning. So yeah, my advice is take the inspiration, like you can get the resources you can find and not be afraid to if you're copying it or stuff like that, because you modify it based on your classroom and with your students, and students really love to help. So if you give them a small thing to try and you're saying, okay, we're going to be learning like this and starting and and then you start your lesson or your course, and then you get their feedback and most of the times they're really, really proud to have their input and they feel like they make a difference to the following years and the following courses that they're actually designing with you. So just, keeping in mind that it's a work in progress and they see you open for change until something clicks and it continues working. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
of course it does.
Hopped with my train of thought, but yeah.
It actually makes plenty of sense if you ask me. I think that's a very significant route to go through. And it's kind of, I don't know if you're a fan of Star Wars and or The Mandalorian. I don't know if you've heard, this is the way. So
True.
I agree that this is the way in that sense. For sure. Yeah, I do think that getting all that inspiration and doing all those fantastic things and involving your students, there is so much that can be done and there's so much to learn in this world. So many people to learn from as well. I mean, I agree that, and I don't know if I've ever heard somebody saying something like, oh, you copied me. That's not very typical, especially in education. I wouldn't say that's, sort of a thing that you would be usually expecting to happen in this world. I don't think that's a thing, basically.
Yeah, I never encountered that also. I wouldn't be talking to you and where I am today if there weren't many, many great people that shared with me and even one-on-one talks and share their work and,
Exactly.
So this is part of the reason that I became a community manager. And I really believe in this principle of sharing and supporting one another and knowing that you can rely on your professional learning network to support, they support you and they help you grow and move forward. It sounds sort of like a new agey thing, but this is what happened to me. So if I can find I make time and I make the effort to sort of pay it forward and give other people what I learned from other teachers, and people that made the time to support me. So
I think this is a very generous community in general. Of course, there's going to be people who behave differently. That's normal. That's part of the norm. It's confirmed by the exceptions in that sense. But I do think I agree. I completely agree with you in the sense that, this is a very generous community. I think that there's plenty of people open to tutoring, mentoring in some capacity, sort of offering a little bit of their time or, taking a look at what you're working on and giving their opinion to help you out, basically. I think, that this is a very, very open community in that sense, and that's something very good. So in the best of senses, of course, don't take this the wrong way, but in the best of senses, take advantage of that engagers. There are plenty of us who are willing to help out, to lend a helping hand out there.
And I think
no problem.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure, but I think that one of the very early resources that I got is your guidebook. I'm pretty sure it was you. So I remember the logo and everything, and I was really happy that you reached out and I could be in your podcast.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that. That warms my heart. And in fact, now you're saying it, I'm trying to remember what that one was, because it's something I haven't been doing a lot more recently. So I probably have to start doing it again.
It was 5 years ago, or 4.5, 5 years ago. So let's look it up later and maybe share the link. I don't remember what it's called. I have it saved on the PDF.
It was a while ago. And I was like, I'm trying to think about it. I think it was in the time when I was about to launch the podcast or just launched it, and was saying like, oh, let's sort of give something away for people to be interested, hopefully something of value as well. And yeah, those were early days for the podcast as well.
Cool.
That was fun. So, lovely to know that you found value in that for sure. And Noa, talking about that process, the steps, that kind of thing, do you have, either when you were creating it yourself in your experience or what you're doing now, is there some form of a process, a series of steps you do when helping people, or when you were creating your own materials for your classes?
I can say, like, teacher's point of view. Actually, no, it's also mine, like what I experience. For like, the thing is to get start small, okay? Just, if you design a whole year or a whole month, or I don't know, just, have that as a vision, but start small, maybe with a unit, or like takes you a lesson or two. And important thing is a very good onboarding process to your game. And then, well, I said before, I'm going to say it again, because this is really the most important thing, to be open for change. So if the students don't connect well, or they don't understand your setup of the game, or maybe it's too complicated and they don't follow, with all, like, maybe you have resources they can accumulate, or lives, or a lot of rewards, or I don't know, if it's too complex from the start, then to keep changing it and be open to their feedback. So a lot of iterations, I think.
For sure, iteration is a big thing that needs to be present. It's something I like to mention quite a bit on my workshops and when we're discussing these kinds of things, because you have to realize, engagers, that we're humans. We're humans and we're not perfect. We don't know what somebody on somebody else's minds either. So we can't read their minds, and that's okay. That's part of it. Like the ability of becoming kind of a mind reader in that sense is actually showing something that you did an MVP, a prototype, something that is pretty early on, getting the reactions. There you're starting to read the minds. Actually, you're seeing what's going on, what people, like, how are they facing it, etc. And there is where you actually start to read people's minds, really. And there is where you start getting that information to make whatever you're doing a lot better and better and better. And that's a process that is crucial. And that's something that we definitely learn from game design. So I'm sure there's plenty of lessons from your game designers as well there, Noa, right?
Yeah. And also one thing that one of my mentors in the accelerator that I was, he told me this principle that there's design by correction and correction by design. So if you're doing correction by design, then you're like doing it in your room, designing, looking at your stuff, correcting it, and keeping designing it and designing it. And that's your way of correcting your work. But if you're doing design by correction, so as you said, you're going with something small, an MVP, a minimum viable product, and then you keep correcting it based on the feedback that you're getting from your students or your users, if you're doing like a game not for school. So it's a little bit of both, but you have to get out there and just do it, as they say, because you need the feedback, like really early on.
Yes, feedback early on, prototype, iterate, feedback. All of those things are always fantastic. So thanks for that, Noa.
Cool.
Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification.
And Noa, is there, would you say that there is some form of a best practice or something that you would say like, oh, when you're, doing your game for learning or games-based learning, when you're doing these things, maybe think about this or maybe do this and it'll most often than not benefit or make it a little bit better or a lot better?
I would say get into game design, at some extent. You don't have to take like a course or like become a game designer, but you have to know like the basics. I think that would really help. And also, I keep repeating, and I can't stress this enough, build on other people's work. You don't have to invent the wheel. You can take something that you really, really love, and also reach out to the person that made it. A lot of people, as we said, try to help, like are keen to help, and then make it your own based on your students' needs, age, the topic that you teach, because you know what works, like what is good learning and good teaching in your topic. So you're the expert on that, and then you just need a game design push, I think.
Yes, and yes. Love it. Love it all, Noa. Thank you for sharing all of that. And, we are game designers, and we're creating all of these things, and we're becoming game designers. We're sort of listening to game designers, and we're standing on top of the shoulders of giants. And yes, it is definitely a cliche, but that's okay.
Totally.
It can be a cliche and still be true. That's one thing. And the other thing is that it's true. Like, it's very, very true. Like, what do we do in school, essentially? Like, what is school all about? Learning the things that we have already learned. Like, humanity is already advanced in all of these subjects, all of these things. Why would, our students have to learn them from scratch all over again, so to speak, right?
Right.
We bring them into the classroom and bring them to that level. Let's apply that to ourselves as well. There's people who've done that. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There's no need for that. Nobody wants another wheel. It's already there. It already exists. You don't need to invent it all over again. Imagine if every time you were going to do like you do with a recipe, right? You don't need, like, every now and then you get creative and make something new, right?
Yeah, but you have to, like, if you know the basic thing really, really well, okay? And then you it, like, I don't know, you took the name, like the example of a recipe. So after you know it really, really well, then you can change it and modifying it and be creative, and you're based on something that works. I haven't heard of any, invention or something new that a person just was closed in their room, like having no contact with the outer environment and other people's work, and they didn't read anything before or learn something before. And then, a great invention just popped in their head out of nowhere. So
yeah. And it is innovation. Innovation is still putting things together that were not put together before. And that could be, as you were saying, something that, things that already exist and putting them together in a different way, or just presenting them in a different way. There's many ways that innovation works. Yeah. And
there's a lot of types of innovation. And, you could have something that's incremental or like revolutionized, like really disruptive and something that, rocks everything and starts a new maybe trend or topic, or I don't know. But a lot of times it's incremental, and that's, that's okay. That's good.
That's okay. Exactly.
Yeah. It's not like, people maybe think that creativity and innovation is something that is saved like for a few geniuses or extraordinary people, but it's not. Like I think everybody can do it. Like maybe it's a cliche, but I think with the right environment that we provide, let's say for our kids or for ourselves, you can do like very creative things. Even if they don't change the world, they change something. Okay. So it's better to do something, even if it's small, than just, wait or not do anything because you think it won't have any effect on anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Oh, very, very inspiring. Thank you very much for that, Noa. Very, very interesting. And talking about all that inspiration, I'm sure that listening to these questions, the vibe of the podcast, we're chatting here and having some fun. Is there somebody that comes to your mind and you say, oh, I'd really like to listen to this person answering these questions as well, or similar questions, sort of a future guest for Professor Game?
I would say someone that is, he or she are not educators. Like they know game design, they know maybe like design in general or creative thinking. And then the questions that you ask and the I think it would be interesting to listeners to see some other perspective, something that they can apply to their work, because I think that your listeners are like, I trust them to be great educators and know education and maybe have experience or, I don't know, some kind of belief, like they have their perspective and they know like what good education is. So what they need, I think, is a perspective from someone that is not in the field of education. And then they could go, oh, this will work, or this, like, it doesn't know what he's talking about. This is not for school, like, at all. But some ideas, like, we could learn from a whole new, how do you call it? Like a domain, like a whole new domain that we're not used to. So that would bring a fresh perspective, I think.
Absolutely. And again, if you think of somebody eventually during the interview or afterwards, we're always happy to receive those suggestions. Hopefully some of the past guests as well, who are not necessarily sort of gamification and game-based learning experts, but could be on game design, they could be on gamification, but outside of learning as well. We've even brought every now and then sort of different neuroscientists. We've had a couple as well. That kind of inspiration, I can't agree more with Noa, that is also sort of cross-pollination of other things that are happening. And again, we come back to innovation, right? If something is being applied, say, in operations and you know, the operations of a factory, and that's being very useful, and maybe we can cross-pollinate that and it works as well somehow in education, or we bring a part of that idea and bring it to education. That is innovation. The fact that somebody else did it before on something else in a different place doesn't mean that it's not innovative for the field. So love that answer. Love having people from different domains. Very welcome in Professor Game for sure. And talking about recommendations.
This cross-pollination metaphor. Analogy, metaphor. I don't know. Literature teachers can say, but I love this idea of cross-pollination. Didn't think of it.
Sure. It and hopefully it is a source for innovation as well. And Noa, talking about all those, you know, recommendations and inspiration as well from relatively similar or close fields or not so close fields, is there any book that you would recommend the engagers to read?
You know what? I don't read books, like not professional books. I'm really amazed with teachers sharing pictures or sharing their reading list, and not only teachers, like people in general. Okay, like sharing their reading, like reading list. Okay, or having like sort of sharing book ideas and sort of book clubs, either online or not. Like, I'm really envious on that because, I don't know, it's not like I don't use that medium for learning, and I should, because some people write great books. So I can't recommend one specifically, but maybe
it's
audiobook.
Audiobooks as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It could be a good sort of entry level kind of, because in the end, as I was starting to say, is it's a habit, and some people like to cultivate that habit. I am one who would like to cultivate that habit a lot more. In fact, I haven't read in several weeks. I don't feel very good about it, you know, but it's a question of priorities and all these things. But it's a habit, and habits are sometimes things you choose to have, or sometimes things you choose to, you know, just let go. And both options are fine. Both options are fine. I do recommend people to read. I do think it's a very valuable medium to learn from other people as well, and to sort of go deep. Twitter, for example, the cross-pollination is absolutely fantastic, especially if you surround yourself with the right people. And you look for, you know, not only stressful news and people who are sort of bantering around. Right, you also look for inspiration and all of that. But it's also a short medium. Like, by definition, you know, Twitter was created to be short micro blogging. And even a blog, it's still, you know, relatively long. It could be like sometimes even like a chapter of a book. But then the book has that sort of depth that you can get into, that medium that could be interesting. So again, I'm not trying to sell any books. In fact, I haven't written any books to this date, at least yet. But I do think that the medium has a lot of value. I'm not saying become a sort of a bookworm and be reading books all day, but I do think there is plenty of value. And there's, as you were saying, very valuable and valid artists, I was going to say, authors that have done fantastic work on their books there's a lot of value there, and it's definitely something I want to look more into for sure, in my life particularly, at least. So Noa, we've recommended quite a few things. We'd also like to know, beyond recommending other people and books and other guests and things to do, what would you say in your case? What is your superpower? That thing you do great, or at least better than most other people in the world of games-based learning, game design, whatever that looks like.
I would say it's the collaboration and making connections and finding, as you said, surrounding myself with great people. And if someone else needs reaches out for a recommendation or a question and stuff like that, then most of the times I know how to connect them with the person that they need, or either move a step forward in those circles, just to reach another person that maybe I don't know personally, but I have a clue who would direct them in the right direction. And as we said, we discussed about earlier, then I wouldn't be where I am today if people didn't collaborate and share with me and guide me. So I think
you're sort of the super connector.
Now that you're saying it, I read one book I read, actually listened to, is called A Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And it's not, educational or game, but my takeaway from it was that great things can happen if there's three kinds of people mixing together, even if it's a really, really small group. So there's people that are the knowledge base. I don't remember how he called it, but they know things. They make it their mission to learn about new things and find out how they work and go deep. So they know things. And there are people who are connectors that once we talked about that earlier, just now. So people who can connect other people and they know who to connect to other people. And then there's the last type of people, which he called the salesman. I don't like this description, but, people who are very charismatic, who could get people on board with an idea or a movement or something that they would like and they think is right and would like to do. So if you have a mix of all three types of people, then great things can happen. And this is what I found out also. We talked about some things being cliches and stuff like that, but I know this is my personal experience.
Interesting perspective. I've heard of the book, but I have to say I haven't read it. It's not even nearly on the top of my reading list at this point for sure. But it could be something very interesting to consider.
Yeah, when I got into entrepreneurship and learned about innovation and all, so one of the things that, one of the books as an entrepreneur, I got this recommendation. So it's a whole, as you said, a whole different domain, but maybe cross-pollinate. I love that thing. Cross-pollinate to teachers and educators.
Love it. Love the cross-pollination in most of its forms, at least. Love the fact that you're now using that as a term. I love that you're using it. I didn't invent it, that's for sure. So use it freely, use it openly, no restrictions of any sort. So go ahead and go for that. And I do, as you were saying, I do think it is super, super valuable to consider sort of the different profiles of people and think when you're innovating, when going forward with some form of sort of innovative endeavor, you have to consider that there's different types of people that you will need involved in all of this, and that's a good thing. It's good news that you'll need of these different sort of characters, because you'll be just one of them, and that means you get to collaborate with other fantastic people as well.
Great, totally. And in any way, in general, keeping in mind that there's all kinds of different types of students or types of people, and being open-minded to that, I think it leads to good things, to improvement, and not just, being set in your sort of silo and your belief, and not being open for change. So
there you go.
Good advice, hard to implement.
That's also true. Understanding there's people that think different than you and are not necessarily wrong. That's not an easy one, right?
Yeah. In Hebrew, there's a saying that there is no one truth. I don't know if that transfers really grammatically correct into English, but I think you get the idea that you don't own the truth. And some people can do stuff differently and still reach the same goal, or many
goals,
things
in any case.
Many things are I don't know how to articulate this, but like when I am a lot on Facebook and I talk about and people ask me about how to make your posts viral and how to get the thing you want, like the call to action that you want out of a post. So there isn't only one way to write a post that would go viral. A lot of people have many, many tips, and you can't really pinpoint what is the recipe. Like there isn't one.
Yeah, there isn't just one recipe, at least, for sure.
Yeah.
So in your route through entrepreneurship, I'm sure that you heard at least once, success leaves clues, which doesn't mean that you have to do exactly the same thing that somebody else did. So
I didn't
one
hear
thing
that.
does not equate the other one. Really? You haven't
I
heard
didn't hear that
Oh.
saying, but I really love it. So how do you go? Success leaves clues?
Leaves clues, yes. You'll get clues from people who have been there and done that in some capacity.
I love this. I love it. I was stuck with there's no right formula, not one winning formula for success, like for a startup to succeed. But your version is better. I like it a lot.
They're both good. Both good. I love that as well. Love that one too. All right. So, beyond all of the great advice that you've given, you've talked a lot. I don't know if you have any sort of final words, anything else you want to say, anything else you want to make sure that the engagers are left with. And of course, let us know where we can find out more about you, about your work, about what you're doing. Hopefully there are people as well, near and dear to your heart, or maybe even people in Israel listening to us who want to work with the ministry and the project you're doing, or anybody else. I don't know, whatever you want to go for. And Noa, it's your time.
Okay, so you can catch me on any social, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. We'll have the handles and the links in the show notes. And, reach out and share, or, be open for feedback and ask questions. And I'd love to hear from you out there and share my experiences.
For sure. And the engagers are definitely very social beings as well, and very interested in getting more inspiration and asking questions. So hopefully plenty of them will go to that. Engagers, if you type Noa, N-O-A, you will definitely find that on the show notes page on professorgame.com. You'll find their Twitter handle, LinkedIn handle, whatever Noa has left for us there. You will be finding it there for sure. And Noa, thank you very much once again for participating on the podcast today, for dropping all those value bombs that you gave us, for sharing all of that knowledge, all of those insights, all of your experience. However, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast, and I hope you enjoyed this interview with Noa. Do you have questions that you would like to ask some future guests? If you do, please go to professorgame.com/question and ask your question. When it is selected, it'll come up in a future episode and you will get your answer live in an episode. And before you go on to your next mission, remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.